Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is expected to attend a pivotal Supreme Court hearing today. It's an unusual move for a Fed chair and a strong show of support for Fed Governor Lisa Cook as the court's weighing whether to allow President Trump to fire her. The president tried to remove Cook in August, accusing her of mortgage fraud despite no charges against her. Cook denies the allegations, and in September, a U.S. district court ruled she could stay on while she fights the firing. Now the case could set a larger precedent on the power of the president to remove a member of the Fed for any reason.
This is absolutely devastating for Pam Bondi and Donald Trump. Attorney General Bondi just watched the Supreme Court shred her legal arguments in real time. During emergency oral arguments Wednesday over Trump's unprecedented attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, the justices made it clear they're not buying what Bondi's Justice Department is selling, and I mean made it brutally clear. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's own appointee, said allowing this firing would shatter Federal Reserve independence. Chief Justice John Roberts questioned whether one stray reference in mortgage paperwork justifies destroying institutional safeguards that have existed for 112 years. At least 5 justices signaled they're inclined to keep Cook in her position. That's catastrophic for Bondi, because this Supreme Court case is just one piece of a much bigger legal storm that's engulfing her entire operation at the Department of Justice. But it gets worse. Much worse, because simultaneously, Bondi's DOJ is being dragged into a constitutional crisis over the criminal investigation into Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Grand jury subpoenas served. Threats of criminal indictment. Markets in turmoil. Republicans and Democrats in Congress unified in outrage. All living former Fed chairs condemning the investigation. And Bondi right in the middle of it. Her name attached to both attacks on Fed independence. Her Justice Department executing Trump's vendetta against anyone who won't cut interest rates the way he demands. This isn't just bad optics. This is Bondi's DOJ being weaponized so aggressively that even Trump-appointed judges are pushing back. But real quick, before we get into this, please subscribe, because you might think you are, but aren't. Your subscription actually matters here. That's why we built Patrick Smith Show, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. All right, let's get into what's actually happening. Wednesday's Supreme Court arguments were supposed to be Bondi's chance to defend Trump's right to fire Fed governors. Instead, they turned into a disaster. The justices weren't just skeptical. They were openly critical of the administration's legal theories. Kavanaugh warning about shattering Fed independence. Roberts questioning the entire premise. Sotomayor expressing sympathy for Cook having to navigate mortgage paperwork. The entire case collapsing in real time. And Bondi's DOJ standing there watching their arguments get demolished by the very court they thought would support them. Think about what that means. Trump has been trying to reshape the Federal Reserve for months. First, he fired Lisa Cook based on allegations she committed mortgage fraud. Allegations that Cook's lawyers told Bondi have no basis in reality. No fraud, no intent to deceive, nothing criminal. Just one stray reference in thousands of pages of mortgage documents. Documents where Cook explicitly stated the property was a vacation home, a second home. The case rests on nothing, and the Supreme Court sees right through it. Share this video with everyone you know, because lower courts already ruled Trump's firing was unlawful. District Judge Gia Cobb said the administration didn't satisfy the legal requirement that Fed governors can only be fired for cause. Said the firing would deprive Cook of due process. The D.C. Circuit Court affirmed that ruling 2-1. So Trump's lawyers went to the Supreme Court begging for emergency relief, asking the justices to let the firing proceed while litigation continues. And Wednesday, the justices basically said no, said allowing this would undermine Fed independence, would set dangerous precedent, would violate protections that have existed since the Federal Reserve was created. Now let me walk you through why this matters beyond just one case, because if Trump could fire Lisa Cook, he'd have 4 of his appointees on the 7-member Fed board. That's a majority. That's control. That's the ability to slash interest rates regardless of inflation, to manipulate monetary policy for political purposes, to turn the independent Federal Reserve into a tool of the White House. And that's exactly what Trump wants. He's been demanding lower rates for months, attacking Powell publicly, blaming the Fed for not cutting rates fast enough. And now his Justice Department is using criminal investigations to pressure Fed officials into compliance. Make sure you're subscribed to Patrick Smith Show, because here's where the Powell investigation comes in, and where Bondi gets dragged even deeper into this mess. On January 9th, the Justice Department served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, investigating Powell over testimony he gave to Senate Banking Committee in June about a building renovation project, a $2.5 billion renovation of Fed headquarters. DOJ claims Powell lied to Congress, claims he misled senators about lavish amenities, rooftop gardens, custom elevators, VIP dining rooms, white marble finishes, the administration calling it ostentatious, claiming it's abuse of taxpayer dollars even though the Fed isn't funded by taxpayers. Powell responded with an extraordinary video statement, said the investigation is a pretext, said it's political intimidation designed to force his resignation, said the real issue is the Fed's refusal to cut interest rates to Trump's preferred levels, called the threatened criminal charges masks for Trump's frustration. That's the Fed chair publicly calling out the Attorney General for weaponizing the Justice Department. That's unprecedented. That's a constitutional crisis playing out in real time. Think about the timeline. Trump has been attacking Powell since before his second term began, demanding rate cuts, threatening to fire him, calling him ineffective. Then in late 2025, DOJ quietly starts criminal investigation. By January, they're serving subpoenas, threatening indictment, all while the Supreme Court is hearing arguments about firing Lisa Cook. It's coordinated. It's deliberate. It's a two-pronged attack on Fed independence with Bondi's name all over both prongs. And the reaction has been swift and bipartisan. Republican Senator Thom Tillis sits on the Senate Banking Committee. He announced he's blocking all Trump nominees to the Federal Reserve. Won't confirm anyone. Not even Trump's pick to replace Powell. Not until this legal matter is fully resolved. That's a Republican senator using his power to oppose his own president, to protect Fed independence, to push back against what he explicitly called an attempt to end Fed autonomy. Democrats Jamie Raskin and Jared Moskowitz sent letters demanding Bondi testify before Congress, demanding production of all documents between DOJ and White House regarding Powell, demanding public hearings on the investigation's implications. Both parties unified in outrage, both parties recognizing this crosses a line, both parties demanding accountability from Bondi's Justice Department. And here's what makes this even more devastating for Bondi. Markets are in turmoil. Gold prices shattered records, dollar plummeting, treasury yields spiking, investors applying what analysts call a politicization discount to American assets. Because if the Attorney General can threaten criminal charges against the Fed chair for not cutting interest rates, then U.S. monetary policy isn't independent anymore. It's political, it's weaponized, it's unreliable. And that destroys confidence, destroys stability, destroys America's credibility in global financial markets. Notice what the Supreme Court arguments revealed about the administration's legal position. Cook's lawyers wrote to Bondi in November, laid out exactly why the mortgage fraud allegations have no merit, explained that Cook specified the property was a vacation home, a second home, that the case rests on one stray reference plainly innocuous in light of multiple truthful disclosures. They begged Bondi not to pursue this, and Bondi ignored them, pushed the case to Supreme Court anyway, and now the justices are making clear the administration's position is weak. Kavanaugh's comment about shattering Fed independence is particularly damning, because he's a Trump appointee. He's supposed to be sympathetic to executive power, but even Kavanaugh recognizes this goes too far. Even he sees the danger in allowing presidents to fire Fed governors over policy disagreements disguised as misconduct allegations. When your own appointees are warning you're crossing constitutional lines, you've lost. And the Powell investigation is following the same playbook. Disguise policy disagreement as criminal misconduct. Claim it's about building renovations and taxpayer abuse when it's really about interest rate policy. Threaten criminal charges to force resignation. Create for-cause justification where none exists. And hope courts don't see through it, but courts are seeing through it. Supreme Court questioning the Lisa Cook firing. Senator Tillis blocking nominees until Powell investigation resolves. The entire strategy falling apart. And Bondi is the face of it. Her name on the investigations. Her Justice Department serving subpoenas. her U.S. attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro handling the Powell case. Every piece of this connects back to Bondi. When it fails, and it is failing, she takes the blame. When markets panic, they blame Bondi. When constitutional scholars warn about attacks on Fed independence, they point to Bondi. She's become the symbol of DOJ weaponization, and that's a legacy that will follow her forever. Think about what happens next. Supreme Court likely rules against Trump on the Cook firing, keeps her in position, reaffirms that Fed governors can't be fired without actual cause. That establishes precedent protecting Powell too, makes the criminal investigation even harder to justify. Because if Trump can't fire Cook over disputed mortgage paperwork, he certainly can't indict Powell over building renovation testimony. The legal theories are collapsing, the strategy is failing, and Bondi is left holding the bag. Congressional pressure intensifies. Tillis won't confirm nominees. Raskin demands testimony. Both parties investigating whether DOJ coordinated with White House, whether Trump directly ordered the Powell investigation, whether Bondi followed proper procedures or just executed Trump's vendetta. Every question makes Bondi look worse. Every revelation undermines her credibility. Every day this continues erodes whatever institutional legitimacy DOJ had left. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because here's the broader pattern. This isn't the first time Bondi has weaponized Justice Department for Trump. She fired prosecutors who refused to pursue cases against Trump's enemies. She disbanded the Public Integrity Section that investigates government corruption. She shut down Epstein Files investigation after reportedly telling Trump his name appeared in documents. She's facilitated every Trump demand regardless of legality or ethics. And now she's executing the most dangerous demand yet, the one that threatens Fed independence, the one that could destabilize global financial markets, the one that even Trump-appointed judges won't support. All living former Fed chairs issued joint statement condemning the Powell investigation. Janet Yellen, Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan. People from both parties who served in that role warning this threatens stability of global economy. That's unprecedented. That's the financial establishment unified against what Bondi's DOJ is doing. And their warning is clear. If Fed independence falls, U.S. credibility falls with it. Interest rates spike. Inflation becomes uncontrollable. Economic disaster follows. All because Trump wants lower rates and Bondi is willing to destroy institutions to give him what he wants. The Supreme Court arguments Wednesday showed that at least some judges understand what's at stake. Roberts owns multiple properties, knows how complex mortgage paperwork can be, expressed skepticism that one reference justifies firing someone. Sotomayor sympathized with Cook needing to move to Washington and rent out her Michigan home, understanding the real-world complications that create paperwork inconsistencies. The justices seeing through the pretext, recognizing this is about control, not misconduct. Share this with everyone because Bondi's position is untenable. She's defending investigations that courts don't believe, markets don't trust, Congress is investigating, former Fed officials are condemning. Her own legal arguments getting shredded by Trump-appointed justices. Every direction she turns, more problems, more failures, more evidence that she's weaponizing DOJ beyond what even sympathetic judges will tolerate. And Trump won't protect her when this falls apart. He never does. He'll blame Bondi for the failures, for not being aggressive enough, for not finding ways around constitutional limits, for not delivering the Fed takeover he demanded. Trump will throw her under the bus exactly like he's done with every other attorney general, and Bondi will be left with destroyed reputation, failed legacy, historical footnote as the AG who tried to politicize the Federal Reserve and failed spectacularly. The emergency nature of the Supreme Court arguments matters. Trump wanted immediate relief, wanted Cook fired while litigation continues, wanted to reshape Fed board before anyone could stop him. But emergency relief requires extraordinary circumstances, requires showing irreparable harm. Trump's lawyers couldn't show that, couldn't explain why waiting for final ruling harms anyone except Trump's political agenda. So, Supreme Court likely denies emergency relief. Leaves Cook in position, makes Trump wait, and waiting means losing because his term ends before this litigation concludes. Think about what the Powell subpoenas reveal about DOJ's desperation. They didn't coordinate with Main Justice before serving them, didn't tell White House or Treasury, kept the circle small. NBC News reported 3 sources confirming U.S. Attorney's Office acted independently. That's either rogue prosecutors or deliberate attempt to create deniability. Either way, it shows panic. Shows Bondi's DOJ trying to move fast before anyone stops them. Before markets react, before Congress intervenes, and it backfired. Powell went public. Markets panicked anyway. Congress united in opposition. Bottom line is this. Pam Bondi is trapped in a legal storm of her own making. Supreme Court shredding her arguments about firing Lisa Cook. Congressional investigation into Powell subpoenas heating up. Markets in turmoil. Republicans blocking nominees. Democrats demanding testimony. All living former Fed chairs condemning her actions. And Trump expecting results she can't deliver. Can't fire Cook because courts won't allow it. Can't indict Powell without destroying what's left of Fed independence. Can't satisfy Trump without crossing lines even Trump-appointed judges won't accept. Wednesday's Supreme Court arguments made that clear. 5 justices skeptical. Trump's own appointees warning about consequences. Roberts and Sotomayor sympathetic to Cook. Kavanaugh explicitly saying this would shatter Fed independence. The legal position crumbling. The strategy failing. And Bondi standing there watching her case implode. Where does this leave her? Defending indefensible investigations, threatening charges no court will uphold, serving subpoenas that unite both parties against her, destroying DOJ's credibility, undermining Fed independence, panicking markets, all to satisfy Trump's demand for lower interest rates, all to give him political control over monetary policy, all for a goal she can't achieve because constitutional limits still exist and courts are finally enforcing them. The parallel attacks on Cook and Powell show coordination, show strategy, show Bondi's DOJ executing comprehensive plan to reshape Federal Reserve leadership. Fire Cook, indict Powell, force both out, replace with Trump loyalists, control the Fed, slash interest rates, manipulate economy for political gain. That's the plan. But it's failing. Courts pushing back, Congress investigating, markets rejecting, and Bondi absorbing all the blame. Supreme Court ruling on Cook case could come soon, could be as early as next week, and based on Wednesday's arguments, it's going to be a loss for Trump. Going to keep Cook in position, going to establish precedent-limiting presidential power over Fed, going to undermine the entire strategy. And when that happens, Powell investigation becomes even harder to justify. Senator Tillis blocking nominees becomes permanent. Congressional demands for Bondi's testimony intensify. The legal storm gets worse. This is Bondi's legacy being written in real time. Attorney General who weaponized Justice Department, who attacked Fed independence, who served Trump over Constitution, who crossed lines even conservative justices wouldn't accept. History books will remember her as the AG who tried to destroy institutional safeguards and failed. Law school textbooks will study her as example of politicized prosecution. And when it all collapses, Trump will blame her for not going far enough, for not finding ways around constitutional limits, for failing to deliver what he demanded. This story continues. Stay tuned, because Supreme Court ruling could drop any day. Congressional hearings are being scheduled. Powell's term as chair ends in May, and Trump needs to name replacement. Markets watching every development. And Bondi trapped in the middle. Defending investigations she can't win. Facing consequences for weaponization courts won't tolerate. Watching her legal theories get shredded by justices who understand what's at stake. This is what happens when Attorney General prioritizes politics over law, when DOJ becomes weapon instead of institution, when constitutional limits get tested and courts push back. And we're watching it happen, watching the storm engulf Bondi, watching the strategy fail, watching Fed independence survive, for now.